You won't believe what happened to nuns after Viking raids ended. It's way worse than the fighting itself, and real history proves it with cold, hard evidence. Imagine the battles are over. The last monk's prayer echoes away. The smoke from torched churches drifts up into the morning sky. That's when the real nightmare kicked in, not for the dead fighters who were finally at peace, but for the nuns left behind. These were women who had dedicated their whole lives to serving God, and now they stared down a fate that made quick death seem like a kindness. You might think you get how brutal Vikings were, but even their own stories go quiet on this part. If you're into actual proven facts from Viking times, hit that subscribe button. It lets us dig up more hidden truths like this. And tell me, what city are you tuning in from? This story pulls from Ibn Fadlan's eyewitness accounts and digs at slave markets in Dublin. Let's jump back to 845. Thorgest and his ships hit the monastery at Clonmacianoise. 43 monks fall while trying to protect the altar. The guy writing it all down notes the killings, then his pen just stops. He never mentions what happened to the nuns, but digs at the site do. Work at Dublin's Wood Quay uncovered the setup for Viking slave markets. With iron chains made for thin wrists, leg irons small enough for kids, and building bases meant to lock up people like stock. The Vikings in Dublin weren't just after gold or holy items, they came for people to sell. A nun they grabbed wasn't seen as God's worker anymore. She was just goods on a shelf. Stone carvings from Schleswig list real prices. 20 pieces of silver for a young nun, 15 for one getting older, 10 if she got hurt in the attack. Actual sales records etched in rock. But get this, the saga skipped the details. Getting sold was the end result. In 862, Vikings hit the monastery at Portnoe. Irish records note 47 fighters killed, then nothing. No word on the nuns pulled from their rooms. But dirt tests from nearby swamps show the real story. 23 women's bodies, all with the same awful marks, heavy hits to the head, cuts on arms from trying to block blows, broken ribs from ongoing attacks. These weren't from fighting in battle, they were planned killings, done over and over. Tests date the deaths to just days after the raid. They died after giving up, after being held, once the Vikings decided their path, and the choice was always the same. In 871, the Great Heathen Army takes. Reading. English records talk about the loss but say zero about what hit the holy women in the abbey. The ground tells what the writings leave out. At the old palace area, they found rust from blood under the rocks, enough for many people. Viking fighting rules had their own harsh laws. A beaten man's wife or a nun under his care turned into the winner's property, not to clean or cook, but as his partner by force. In Old Norse, it was called Konarine, woman-owned who could have kids. Laws from Iceland called Gragas explain it step by step. The guy claims her in front of people watching. What she wants doesn't matter. It's all legal, and any kids from it count as real heirs, even if started with force. But this messed up take on marriage wasn't the lowest point. In 878, Norse attackers go after the monastery at Bangor. Records note the place wrecked, but not the aftermath. Digs step in where words fail, with ash levels showing women's bones laid out in set patterns. Viking burial habits required killing people to go with the dead warrior. Ibn Fadlan saw one himself on the Volga in 921, where a slave girl gets assaulted, given drugs, and choked before the fire for her owner. He watched it once, but digs show it went on all the time. Checks on Scandinavian boat graves match up, with women's bones having choke marks, bits of henbane and other mind-altering plants stuck in teeth. Stuff to numb terror and make them go along. They passed away in hallucinations, maybe thinking it was heaven's glow, or maybe something much worse. By 9-7, the big army camps for winter at Thetford. Writings list, stolen cows. Burned churches, but skip the nuns grabbed. But trash piles near there reveal more. In the garbage, experts found baby bones, lots of them, with clear signs of on-purpose head injuries. These weren't babies lost at birth. They were killed on purpose. Kids from Viking attacks on nuns, ones no side wanted to keep. The killings were planned and regular. Viking rules said if the mom was owned, the kid was too. If it couldn't work, it didn't get to live. Whole groups of religious women vanish from history after Viking hits. Spots like Whitby, Iona and Caldingham, where crowds of devoted ladies disappear in a night. Digs at Repton, the Great Army's base from 873 to 874, turned up 249 bodies. Just 63 were women. The math adds up. The others got hauled away. Tests on teeth and bones show that buried women weren't local English. They hailed from Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. Christian nuns yanked from safe places and shipped over waters. You won't believe what happened to nuns after Viking raids ended. It's way worse than the fighting itself, and real history proves it with cold, hard evidence. Imagine the battles are over. The last monk's prayer echoes away. The ones who got lucky passed in labor. The others faded into slave paths up to Scandinavia, east along Russ rivers, south to Muslim markets. Dublin wasn't only a dock, it was a hub for handling people. Every new dock grew the business, and inside clean walls, Christ's nuns lost it all, even their identities. Their promises to God lasted forever. Their pain dragged on way longer. These places weren't short stops. They were built for keeping people a long haul, like storage for humans. Writings from Arabic folks in the 9th century talk about Viking slave groups, lines from the Baltic clear to Baghdad. The nuns fetched top dollar in those far markets. Light-skinned ones from Celtic or Germanic areas were seen as rare finds, signs of wealth and rank for buyers abroad. Vikings spotted the need and filled it with cold precision. They didn't raid monasteries by chance. They fed a worldwide business in broken faith and pain. Their path east went through Novgorod and Kiev. A long trip down the Dnieper River. Lists and runes on ships noted people next to animal skins and gems. 20 nuns, a boat, normal load. But the absolute worst wasn't being a worker, or made to change beliefs or killed in rites. It was saved for nuns who fought back. In 914, Irish troops take Dublin back from the Norse. The annals of the Four Masters note the win, but not the awful find just outside town. Digs show killing holes lined with rocks, made not for fast death but drawn-out suffering. Inside, bones with planned breaks, legs smashed to stop running, arms broken to end any self-defense. The nuns stayed breathing while everything fell apart. Each hole was 6 feet down and 3 wide, no room to stretch out, not tall enough to stand. They died hunched over, taking days or even weeks. Viking rules spelled out these 4 slaves or prisoners who hid owners. Buried but still getting air, trapped with no way out. End came from no water, no food, or the elements. Dirt tests from Dublin back up slow rot, showing these nuns lingered in death. The meanness was on purpose. Some holes had sharp rocks, others cold water pooling. It wasn't about killing quick, it was a show. Cain put on display for the ones still there. Other grabbed nuns had to see it. The point hit home. Follow orders or face this. In 919, Norwegian King Harald Fairhair locks in his rule. Fights inside stop, and big Viking pushes slow down, but slave lines keep going. Calm didn't kill the business, it made it smoother. Same paths from raids turn into set trafficking ops. Notes show Viking sellers promising safe drop-offs of people. Deals with Byzantium even wrote in those details. The Rus-Byzantine deal of 944 set prices by type, young nuns at the high end, ones with child cheaper, kids under 10, almost nothing. This wasn't wild mess. It was business. By 937, at the Battle of Brunanburh, 5 Irish and Anglo-Saxon groups team up to smash the Norse. They pull off a big win, but what turns up in Viking supply lines blows minds. Portable cages for breeding, metal frames to hold live captives, chain sets tiny for little ones, moving slave spots that followed the troops. These could break down and set up fast, like kits for keeping people locked long-term. Digs found rings worn down from chains, signs of non-stop use. The design was smart, organized, terrifying. Grab nuns weren't war leftovers. They were the main score.
Alive.
Assets to grab, sort, and send out. Viking trade relied on their forced work. Women of spirit turned into fuel for an empire's money machine. Surveys of Norse spots from Dublin to Hiddeby spot the same setup. Every big town had lockups. Every harbor a sorting spot. The captivity system was all over, right under noses. In 954, when Eric Bloodaxe falls at Stainmore and the final Viking rule in England crumbles, the network doesn't die, it switches owners. Christian lands take over Viking slave paths and tweak them. Monastery notes from the next 100 years list huge counts of bound workers. These folks didn't sign up. They were relabeled slaves, nuns, once taken by Vikings, now under Christian bosses. Terms shifted, bonds stayed. By 1066, with Harold Hardrada's end at Stamford Bridge, the Viking era in England wraps up official. But graves paint a grimmer picture. Big burial sites packed with nuns, timed to Viking losses, hint at dark cleanup. When Viking control broke, proof had to go. Those who saw got quieted. Tooth and bone tests say they were Norse, not English. These weren't captives. They were Viking women of faith in Norse areas, killed by their own, as English pushed in. Ways matched what they did to others. They knew capture's fate since they dealt it. Repton dirt checks showed deaths over days, not one rush, but step-by-step wipeout. One skull had runes cut in, ekpatrasfer. I'm better this way. She carved after she was gone, maybe to make it okay. The skull was a girl's 12 or 14, young nun born in Norway, taken to England young and killed by family to avoid her getting caught, even dead. Vikings wanted their reasons to last. This whole setup of forced sex wasn't crazy anger. It was rulebook stuff. Iceland's Graga's laws noted how to claim nuns as yours. The taker says it out loud with watchers. Nuns no didn't count, her say meant zip. If she ended herself to get free, the owner could bill her kin, 40 silver marks, cost of a person, and a year's work. Killing yourself was stealing from them, per law. In 978, Tellard takes England's throne. His first rule hits Viking people's sails, not to stop it, but to charge fees. London port logs list taxes on people, 5 silver per nun, 2 per kid. The English didn't hate the Viking ways. They wanted the cash. See, wreck finds show how pro the trade got. Sunken ships in the North Sea have special air holes for live holds, water tanks for long trips, stronger builds for people weight. These weren't attack boats. They were haulers. One from 912 held 80 down below. Fire scars say it burned at sea. Everyone gone. 80 nuns lost chained, sea as tomb. Still some pushed back in ways records ignored. In bits of notes and bone clues, small signs linger. Snapped chains, smashed bones by rivers, rosary pieces in dirt. Signs some nuns battled, even if it meant worse ends. Their stand is what stories couldn't wipe. A nun called Gunhild pops in records, a freed Norse prisoner who made her belief a fight tool. She knew chains once. Now the cross was her edge. Gunhild got Viking ways, their bases, their weak spots. For 7 straight years, she ran her own faith-fueled fight against them. French notes say she torched 12 Viking spots and freed over 300 nuns from coastal monasteries. She hit like they did, sudden strikes, dark raids, no pity, no captives. Her last big move hit the slave hub at Ruel. Old accounts call it God's payback. Every traitor they're taken out exact. 47 guys gone the same, cut up first, then left to drain. After Gunhild drops from sight, but burned Norse layers along the Seine fill and more. Somebody hunted Vikings knew just where to hurt and scare. Claiming beaten nuns went past Scandinavia. By the 11th century, Norman writings note like habits in fresh-taken England. William's fighters got land with everything on it. That everything had nuns, listed with animals and crops. The Doomsday Book wrote it plain. Farm notes counting women as assets, priced like farm gear. Castle digs under Norman rules show the how. Underyards, rock rooms with metal doors and zero light, made for nuns. Some fit 30. Bone bits there show baby deaths almost total. Kids from forced stuff hardly made it. It's not accident, rule. A kid from that was proof, and proof risked trouble. Mixed lines meant mess, blamed God's anger. Wiping them was normal. In 1066, Harold Godwinson dies at Hastings, and England gets conquered too. The Norman push copied Viking habits spot on. Rounded up Saxon nuns, forced ties to Norman men, laws that turned attack into blessed match. Wind-blinded writers called it cleanup, bettering Saxon lines. But what gets labeled progress was really wiping groups via sex force. Marriage gifts and heirs made faith money. A nun's form could seal land deals. Her okay didn't factor, church notes hint at pushback. Some Saxon nuns picked death over giving in, ending themselves for honor. Convent counts jumped 3 times in the 10 years post-Hastings. Abbeys packed with hurt sisters wanting safety, but walls couldn't kill the hurt. Self-kills among highborn nuns shot up so much the church named it holy giving, dying to stay pure. The crown called it wrecking goods. Gene work now uncovers what old writers hid. Grave tooth tests show mixed patterns right on known Viking slave paths. Celtic and Saxon mom line DNA in Scandinavian bones from the 9th century on. Not folks moving, but babies from takeover. Vikings built a realm of forced family ties. Today's Icelanders have about 60% Celtic women lines. Norwegian folks show 40% from British spots. Each stat means hundreds of stormed monasteries, thousands of taken nuns, tens of thousands of terror-born kids. New digs in Jorvik, now York, uncover worse. Under old rubble, experts found a building no book mentions, 64 single rock-cut rooms. Dates put build around 876 CE. Every room had wall chains, rings smoothed from endless pull. Not a jail, a place for forced kids. Dirt says used steady for 40 years. Bone pieces say one tale, all nuns, all with many pregnancies, tossed when done birthing. The spot was Central York. Folks had to know. Nearby cathedral notes list kid baptisms from their 732 over 4 decades. Just 12 kids hit 5, called unknowns. They got sold to rich homes as help, their lives paying for new churches. God's jobs funded by planned abuse. Money books from York Minster show steady pays to runners, not hush cash but real deals for safekeep. The church wasn't watching, it was in on it. Same everywhere. Vikings ruled Europe. Big Norse places had their own versions. Every bishop area kept kid baptism lists. Every power took cuts. The setup was huge, gains massive, pain endless. But this horror factory wasn't the finish. The worst find hits Repton again. Under the known killed Norse nun's grave, deeper dirt kill phases over 50 years. Not one event, generations of clearouts. Chem tests find mercury stuff in bones, on purpose slow poison. It drove crazy first, then death. Victims yelled and lost minds way before bodies quit. Planned mean, quiet nuns by faking madness. Viking law said crazy women's words meant nothing. Sanity killed truth. So poison not just to end, but to discredit. Even escapees who could talk lost clear speech. Their pain erased itself. Digs also show kid remains with grown nuns, mom and child done together. Whole lines ended to stop stories passing. Tooth tests say picked ones. Nuns who translated, watched, or knew. Knowing too much was the last wrong. And the carving a skull with 3 rune words, better's far better this way. Somebody paused in the big kill to explain it. Skeletal nuns. Born Norway, to England young, murdered by her people who once saw her holy. The bone words weren't kind. They were owning up. In killing, Vikings had to sell themselves on it. They knew captured nuns' end, since they'd given it.
If you enjoyed diving into this strange, scandalous corner of history, make sure to unlock more secrets with us here at Throne of Scandals. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a story hidden behind the golden doors of the past, because history is full of mysteries.